Yes, people, don't you just love when a topic pops out from nowhere and falls right on your lap? And that is exactly what John Terry has given us today. John Terry has said today that Chelsea 2005 were way better than the Invincibles. Way better. So, you know me, I've got to jump into this conversation and have a discussion about this. And I'm going to give you the exact quote for what John Terry said. Let's take a look at it right now. So, John Terry said, I'm going to be really controversial, but I don't think there's any comparison between Chelsea 04-05 and the Arsenal Invincibles. I think we were way better. We lost one game, which we should never have lost to Man City. Arsenal drew 12 games. When I hear the debate, I think the record of losing one, drawing 8, and only conceding that amount of goals, 15, is sensational. So, that's John Terry's take. And of course, John Terry is a legend of the game. For me, I think he's probably the greatest centre-back in Premier League history. And that's his opinion. Of course, he's going to favour his side, which was absolutely incredible. And actually, John Terry, if you take away the game that he missed, John Terry actually himself only conceded 13 Premier League goals that whole season, which is absolutely incredible. You know what I mean? Like, nobody can speak on that record. It's a record that I think is going to stand for a very, very, very long time. But the one thing that I do dislike is how much people just try and downplay the Invincibles down to 12 draws. Because, I mean, Chelsea drew 8 games and lost 1. So that means Chelsea dropped points in 9 games. Arsenal dropped points in 12. So the difference between how many games Arsenal dropped is 3 more than the games that Chelsea dropped. One team is invincible, didn't lose a game, and one team has an unbelievable record, which is 15. Now, I'm always going back and forth with this one because I think that is an achievement that I don't think in the Premier League era, especially where the game is going now, the way the goals are going in, the velocity, the sheer volume of goals, the way defenders defend, the way everybody wants to play out from the back. It's very hard to imagine a team conceding such little goals, right? But when I look at this comparison, this debate, and yes, people, this is the era that I grew up on, right? I look at the two sides, right? So let me separate it. Let's look at this Chelsea side first. So this Chelsea side, because we're talking about John Terry, that is definitely the most solid side in Premier League history. And not only that, they were absolutely colossal. You know what I mean? That team, that 2005 Chelsea team, changed the English Premier League. And that is a fact. Didier Drogba coming in was the sole pioneer of the big man up front by himself. One man on up top. And the use of Claude Makelele as a number 6 to bring in that 4-3-3 that Jose Mourinho brought through was groundbreaking. It was the pioneer of the 4-3-3 in the Premier League. Now, teams across Europe, some teams across Europe have used a 4-3-3, of course. But in the Premier League, it was predominantly a 4-4-2 league. Simple. A 4-4-2 league. That is what Man United dominated with. That is what Arsenal dominated with. 4-4-2. Jose Mourinho came with the 4-3-3. Didier Drogba, who that's what I call him, one of the most influential players in Premier League history. He comes in, goes up top, and I said Makelele creates this role, which we now know as the Makelele role. What is the Makelele role? We know what the Makelele role is. Just that anchor number 6 that cleans up, passes forward when he needs to pass forward, keeps the ball, and just has that area to himself. Makelele was the absolute master of that, probably the best ever at that in terms of shielding and defending his area, his box, his zones, should I say. There was probably none better. You know, people talk about N'Golo Kante. He's a lot different player than what Makelele was. Makelele was a sheer anchor. Very underrated on the ball as well, by the way. Could get out of tight spaces with his dribbling ability, which people don't really seem to speak about. But I'm currently am watching a lot of Chelsea 2005 because I'm planning on doing a little documentary about something. But we will get there eventually, guys. I'll tell you that. You know, we're always working towards the summer ideas. So anyway, I've been watching a lot of this team, and look, this team was complete in terms of everything that you needed. They had the anchor in Makelele. They had 2 unbelievable centre halves. They had the old-timer goalkeeper. They had 2 centre backs. The only thing they didn't really have is an attacking fullbacks. They had Paulo Ferreira, who's defensively solid, and Gallas at left back, who was pretty much a centre back. So very defensive back 5. And then when you go to in front, they had Frank Lampard. They had Idoko Johnson. They had Didier Drogba. They had Duff. They had Iron Robin. They had these type of players. You know what I mean? They had direct wingers. They had Joe Cole as well. This team was brilliant. This team was fantastic. This team got robbed in Europe by the ghost goal with Luis Garcia. This team could have won the Champions League. This team absolutely dominated the Premier League. 95 points in the Premier League, 15 goals conceded. It was a domination. Jose Mourinho shook the world like no one has ever seen before. That's stone wall hard facts. Hard facts. And they obviously went on done back to back. But let's talk about this Invincible team as well. So that's the Chelsea team. But let's talk about this Invincible team as well, right? This Invincible team, I think, when I look at it, I think it's a very disrespected team as time has gone along, despite no one still doing it. The way people talk, oh, just 12 draws, then don't lose. Why is your team not lost? I mean, why is your team lost? Why is your team lost? You know what I mean? So everyone talking down on the Invincibles, it doesn't really make sense to me in that fashion, because imagine being able to go to every single Premier League team in the world and say to them, in your league, and say to them, you weren't good enough to beat me. You weren't good enough to beat me. None of you guys, everybody, all 19 of you, sit down. Guess what? Not one of you guys were good enough to beat us over 180 minutes. Not one of you guys. For me, that's the ultimate flex. And then you got a lot of people that say stuff like, well, a team can draw 38 games and get relegated. Are we here to have serious football conversations, or are we here to be silly and do hypotheticals? A team can have 38 draws and never going to happen. That's just silly talk. So when I look at these two teams, right, and you look at the football that was played, Arsenal 2004 probably played the best football the Premier League had ever seen up until that point. You're probably thinking about maybe Man City's team 17-18 and stuff that I'll probably say started playing a better brand of football, but that Invincible team had the blend of physical power, athleticism, strength, and footballing ability. And guess what? They'll also mix it up with you if you wanted to get aggressive, if you wanted to fight, as Manchester United have seen, in their battles with that team. One thing I think people also forget is that team was basically the same team in a way from the 2002 team, which did the double. The 2003 team, I think they bottled it by like 8 points to Manchester United. Then they went the next season and went invincible. So that 3-year spell of the Invincibles, they did a double. They almost won the league. They finished second in the next season. So that team collectively was an absolutely brilliant side. And that never seems to get included when people talk about the Invincibles. I feel like when we talk about the Klopp era, we talk about, 18-19 up until 19-20, and then the 21-22 almost won a quadruple. Oh, that era. But when it comes to the Arsenals, we just say, it's a single season, only one season where they good. No, they did the double 2 years before. So, and I think, did they win I think in 2003, the FA Cup 2003, they also won the FA Cup. So this is what they did. They did the double in 2002. They did the FA Cup in 2003. And they also did the Invincibles in 2004. So that's a great little spell, but it doesn't seem to ever get included. But when you're looking at that team, brilliant football inside, Henry, Bergkamp, Robert Perez, the football was liquid, Patrick Vieira, but they could also mix it up, as I've said. Now, the way I look at the John Terry claim, the way I look at the John Terry claim is a lot different to maybe how other people look at it. I look at John Terry's claim in a different way. So how I say it is, right, John Terry is saying that his team is better. Now, I'll get into that in a second. But in terms of what they're actually talking about, I personally think the Invincibles is the greatest sole achievement in Premier League history. John Terry's record of Chelsea's record is the greatest record in Premier League history. Now, I think there's a real difference between that. The reason why I say that is that records are there to be broken. Records can be broken, right? Liverpool, if COVID never ended, they probably would have broken. It never started. They probably would have broken City's 100 points. Chelsea once upon a time had that with the 95-point team. This team, then it got broken. Like, Records are there to be broken. Goal scoring records. They're all anything. That records are there to be broken. Who does you guys know who got the record before Chelsea? It was actually Arsenal. Arsenal's team, and let me get this up for you guys. Arsenal's team in, I just want to get the right year for you guys so I'm not giving you the wrong stats. Arsenal's team in 98-99, right, conceded 17 goals. 17 goals in all comps. Does anybody talk about them? And you're probably going to think, oh, yeah, that's because Manchester United won the treble that year. Of course, that's when Man United won the treble. But nobody talks about that record or that team because it was broken. That's an absolute solid team. That era is the one that Gary Neville says is the hardest that he's ever played against. But nobody talks about that team or that record, because it got broken. It got broken. So it's like on to the next. Now we talk about John Terry's Chelsea team, Jose Mourinho's Chelsea team. But records are there to be broken. It's the greatest current record, in my opinion, that's standing in the Prem. But as a sole achievement, something that you achieved, I think it has to be the Invincibles. And I'll tell you why I separate those, right? No matter who goes and does the Invincibles, again, they will forever be tied with Arsenal for that record of being a team that lost 0 football matches in the Premier League. You're always going to have to say, we went unbeaten, but Arsenal also went unbeaten. What unbeaten season is better? That's how it's going to be. Whether the guy is going to get 100 points and unbeaten, then you could be like, oh, that version of the unbeaten record is better. But either way, you're always going to have to talk about that sole achievement is always going to have to be spoken about with Arsenal. Chelsea's can go one day. I don't think it will, but it can. Who would have thought 17 would go? But you always have to talk about it and that's why every season when somebody's chasing a quadruple, you're like, oh, if this team get the quadruple, they're probably the greatest team of all time. Because nobody else has done it. Look, City got the treble. Welcome to the treble table. Now it's whose treble is better? Whose treble is better? But if they did a quadruple, they've obviously had the single greatest season that England has ever seen. But now it's whose treble is better? You're sitting on the same table. But with 0 losses, you will never, ever be removed from that table, from that discussion. That's why I think it's the greatest sole achievement in Premier League history. And the way people say, oh, 12 draws, 12 draws. Why hasn't anyone else done it? Preston were the last team to do it in England. And I'm going to get that up. Preston North End unbeaten. Preston North End went unbeaten in a league. I think it was 27 games at the time. And they went unbeaten. Look at the year they went unbeaten, guys. Let me just show you the year that they went unbeaten. Let's get this up. These guys went unbeaten in 1888-89. 27 game season. Arsenal went a 38 game season in 2004. I can't even do the maths. How many years in between is that invincible to this invincible, and it's never been done? So I think people do need to be mindful how they speak about that team personally or that achievement. Now, having said all of that, I do think Chelsea's Jose Mourinho team were better. I do think they were a better team. That doesn't mean they're about achievement, but when John Terry said way better, stretch. Because I saw them in 2004, 2005, 2-2 at Highbury. Henry, last few minutes, missed an absolute sitter to get his hat-trick. that would have been the record gone. And when John Terry says we were way better than Man City, we never should have lost that game. That's what makes it so difficult. That's what makes the achievement so difficult. You could be better on a night and still lose. You could be worse and you have to get the result. Everything comes down to luck. Perez makes that dive against Portsmouth. You guys go and check it. Arsenal get a draw. Ruud van Nistelrooy misses in the last minute penalty. Arsenal get a draw. But also this season as well, Henry misses in the last minute last few minutes against Chelsea. That would have been a win for Arsenal. So one thing I would say, and why I say Chelsea are probably better, and I know it's different seasons, is that Arsenal retained basically all their players that season. If you could correct me if I'm wrong, I think they brought in Cesc Fabregas at that point, but they kept pretty much a lot of their players and brought in, I think they brought in Reyes in the 04-05 season. So I remember Middlesbrough first game of the season. I think it was the 5-3. Reyes came in 2004, 2005. Yes, so they just added onto their squad, and that Chelsea team dominated Arsenal across the league season. And not only that, they did back-to-back. So when I talk about the all-time teams in the Premier League, if you ain't done back-to-back, you ain't at the top table for me. You ain't. Wait until the back-to-backs are done, then your team comes in. That's how I see it. If there's a solo, that's great. The Invincibles, unbelievable. But I still see it as Chelsea 04-05, Chelsea 04-06 as one of the best. Man City's 3-peat, of course, or 4-peat, whatever you want to call it. But I even find the back-to-back team that did it in 17-18, 18-19 as their best version. And then you look at the Man United team, the Man United 3-peat team, for example, or the treble team, etc. I think those are the best teams. Then you bring in the Arsenals. You can bring in Liverpool as well. Maybe Chelsea 09-10 if you want to bring them in. Different variations of the same clubs, really. But I do think that Chelsea team were better. I do think because also when you look at them in Europe, they were actually very unlucky in Europe. They competed very well in Europe. They were playing them great Barcelona teams and handling it and holding their own. Big win at Stamford Bridge. I remember the 4-2. I think that team was a bit more complete. Also, when you look at the depth. So when you look at the depth of the sides, let me get this up. Chelsea 2004. Let's get these teams up. Chelsea 2004, 2005. When you look at the squads, I think this squad, when you're looking at Peter Cech, Glenn Johnson, Makelele, Smerton, Carvalho, Lampard, Kesman, Joe Cole, Duff, Gallas, Jeremy, Drogba, Robin, Wayne Bridge, Scott Parker, Paulo Ferreira, Idoko Johnson, Carlo Cudicini, John Terry, Yuri Arasek, Mikael Fossell, Robert Hoof, Thiago, and then you just got the guys that have never played. So I think that team just had a little bit more depth. If I'm correct in my mind on how I remember, I think that team had a little bit more depth. I'm looking at the Arsenal team. Where is it? Let's get the Arsenal team up. Where's their squad? Yeah, here we go. We got Cole. We got Keown. Didn't play too much Keown. We got Cole, Keown, Patrick Vieira, Robert Pires, Jens Lehmann, Freddie Ljungberg, Reyes. Okay, Reyes came in mid-season. Sorry. Reyes, Dennis Bergkamp, Sylvian Waltord, Lauren, Thierry Henry, Ray Parler, Van Bronckhorst was not involved. Pascal Skigan, pretty awful. Edu, Gilberto Silva, Sol Campbell, Gael Clichy, Colo Torre. So there was a really good squad as well. But I think I would just edge it to Chelsea, especially when you look at what they did the next season and stuff. But that's a whole different discussion. But yeah, guys, man, I do think with what John Terry said, I would say I think John Terry's team were better. Didn't play better football, but just better. But the greatest achievement in Premier League history for me is still the Invincibles. So, guys, for a bit of fun, let's build a Chelsea 2004-2005 and Arsenal 2003-2004-11. Now, if you know me, you know when I do fantasy teams, because it's a fantasy team. We're not putting a team out there to go and win the Premier League. It's a fantasy team. If you know me, I miss out on the fullbacks because, especially in that era, 9 times out of 10, your fullbacks were your worst players. Like, it's just a stonewall fact. I'm talking about Paulo Ferreira, Gallas, Loren. Okay, Ashley Cole, unbelievable. But 9 times out of 10, they were your worst players. So, on this occasion, I'm going to get out my team. This is what it's going to look like. Can you guys see that right there? Let me minimize myself a little bit. But if you can see that right there, this is what my team is going to look like. So we're going to call them right mids. We're not going to call them wing backs or nothing like that. This is what it is. All right. So we go 3 at the back because a lot of times we're putting fullbacks in and the centre backs are always the better players. They're always the better ones. The fullbacks, them times especially, were pretty much failed centre backs. Do you know what I mean? Pretty much failed centre backs. So let's make a combine. Yeah, there we go. Chelsea, a bit of blue, a bit of Arsenal. Can't complain. All right, in goal, I would go Peter Cech. In goal. For me, centre halves, John Terry. I think that's a surefire. I think that's easy. Let me try and zoom in. There we go. That's much better. I'm going John Terry. I'm going Carvalho. And I'm going Big Sol Campbell. Go and watch my vlog. If you ain't watched my vlog, people, go and watch that. You know, Baller League and the Sol Campbell interview. But anyway, then, right here in the anchor role, which I just was speaking about, the Makelele role, I have to go Makelele. Absolute legend. Boss that role, has it named after himself. Right here. Let's not mess around. I'm not here to play games. Patrick Vieira. Whoa. He plays for Senegal. Wait. He plays for Arsenal. He comes from Senegal. Vieira. Whoa. And then, let's not mess about. Super Frank. Super regular Lampard. So we're going Lampard there. Left wing, I'm going Perez. See, now I've got an issue here. I've got a big issue here. I'm going Robert Perez. But see, now this is when the team starts getting very, very ugly. On the right, you know what, people? Low-key, I'm being name brand here. Low-key, Damien Duff was better than Robin at the time. But I think I'm going to go Iron Robin. He was on a good young player of the year kind of form. And up top, Thierry Henry and Drogba. Now, I know a lot of you are probably thinking, where's Dennis Bergkamp? I do think Dennis Bergkamp was starting to come to his twilight. You know what I'm trying to say? Let's look at Dennis Bergkamp. 4 goals. I know he's not all about goals anyway, but as you can see, 21 games started, 4 goals. He was starting to come to his twilight years. Drogba did change the league, you know what I mean? As much as he didn't settle straight away in the Premier League, and there was a lot of talk about his finishing, in these games, guys, that I'm watching of Chelsea at the moment in 2005, my goodness, the way he ragdolls centre-halves, brings people into play. He actually did finish as top assister in the Premier League this season as well. His overall play was great. His finishing wasn't that great. Sounds a little bit like Nico Jackson, but yeah. That's what it is. So I'm going with Peter Cech, Carvalho, John Terry, Sol Campbell, Makelele, Lampard, Vieira, Perez, Robben, Henry, Drogba. So how many of that is of each? 1 Arsenal player, 2, 3, 4. 4 Arsenal, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Chelsea. That fair, guys? What do you think? Of course, if I was playing 4-4-2, Ashley Cole would be in there. people. So that will be one extra that would definitely have gone in there. But guys, you know, there's no diagrams, there's no graphics in this episode. Just me having a talk with you guys. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, turn notifications on. A little bit of a late night one for anybody that's here on a late night Friday night, or is it Saturday night? Hope you enjoy. Like, share, subscribe, turn your notifications on. You guys have been unbelievable in the last week. The content has been coming out, 2 vlogs, Dos Locos, episodes have been coming, and you guys have been showing me love with the numbers, with the likes, and of course, we're almost getting to 30K. We need to start 3K more to get 30K, so let's get there. But guys, it's your boy CultureCams. I'm about to head out. Peace.